Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody that's
Morning,
here.
Mr. Chair.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, everybody. Okay, could I get the approval of the county board
So moved.
minutes? We got a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? There are none. Could I get a motion? for that?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Lemire. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, we have a public hearing, use of an unmanned aerial system.
Yes.
Sheriff's going to come up and explain.
Morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the
Morning,
board.
Dougie.
Morning, everybody.
So everybody's aware, we were here at a planning board meeting, and we talked extensively about the new statute in place, Minnesota state statute, that requires us to have a public hearing for public comment prior to the sheriff's office purchasing and/or using drones. So I got Doug Rexted here with me. He's our coordinator of the drone program. And I talked to him this morning, and we talked to administration. It sounds like we did post everything on the sheriff's office website, our policy. There was a posting in the Morrison County Record as far as the public hearing date. And so here today, just to see if there's anybody maybe that wants to make a public comment. I'm not sure if there's anybody electronically that's observing or listening, but outside of that, that's where we're at.
Okay, what are we looking for here now?
Opening it up for public comment. There doesn't appear to be anybody in person. I'm not seeing anybody online unless, Zach, you have any comment?
Yeah. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we will proceed.
Mr. Chair, if I may, was there any emails or anything with that at all? Nothing?
Then we'd ask for written correspondence at this time, and nope, I didn't get any. I don't know if the sheriff's office did.
The sheriff's office did not receive any electronically or via US mail or phone calls. There was no comments submitted to our agency.
Okay, so now my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you will go back and you'll present this someday to us for a motion?
Nope, it's not a policy or an ordinance or an adoption requirement of the county board. It's just for the sheriff to seek comment as required by the statute, and then he is to incorporate that into his policies for operation when it comes to the sheriff's office. And so we were using this as a venue to be able to proceed with that public comment, but it really is the sheriff's policy to.
Okay, and I asked for public comment, but does any of the board members have any comment?
Mr. Chair, again, I just want to, our sheriff did reiterate that we did discuss this, I think it was last week. And he gave us a lot of good information on it, how it can be used and not be used. So again, I think we covered all our answers here.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski?
if I may, I agree with Commissioner Winter 100%. It's kind of funny to me that law enforcement is in front of us today to sort of get a blessing, if you will, from the public on something that the public wants to have happen, and something that law enforcement has used for X period of time already in critical situations. So I received nothing from anyone. Had I received anything from anyone, I'm hopeful that it would have been nothing but get the job done, and you're doing what you need to do. So thank you for what it is that you are doing.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other comments? If not, I thank you, and we'll move on to the sheriff's report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dougie.
Thanks, Yep. Dougie. Have a good day, everybody. You too.
Do you have a sheriff's report that you submitted?
Yeah.
It's
it came-
separately.
it came
Mary
separate later.
submitted it separately, I believe.
Okay, all right.
Hopefully you have it, correct?
But it'll take me
Okay.
just a minute here, but I'll get it.
All right.
Tabitha, do you have a copy of the agenda? I don't have one.
She gave one.
Mike, we gave it to everybody but you.
Yeah.
With those new glasses, you couldn't see it sitting there in front of you.
Yeah, there we go. Better get a new pair of glasses.
We're waiting for Deb to bring up the report.
Did you just add the sheriff's, okay. All right, that was part of the problem here, sorry.
Okay, Sean, you can proceed whenever you're ready.
So, like always, we always start off with a couple photos. So for the month of January, this was a photo of a retired Little Falls police officer, Ron Nearing. And what happened was we received an email from our veterans administrator, Kathy Marshak. She pushed an email out to all veterans stating, hey, there's some veterans in need. This veteran is in need of some snow plowing. So, of course, I received the email and I'm like, well, that's something we could possibly help out with. So over our lunch hour, grabbed a couple deputies and we plowed his driveway and we shoveled his sidewalks. And it's just something we can do for the community. And that was a good PR piece, so that's why we're sharing this.
First class, Sheriff.
Yeah, that's very good you do that.
As far as training, we had 17 officers attend the firearms training Alpha 14 shoot house. This training was conducted at Camp Ripley in the month of January. It was all small arms, pistol training. We did scenario-based training, basically shoot, no-shoot scenarios that we're required to do through the post board. And tactical entries, light, low light, things of that nature. So it's good that we're able to get back in the swing of things, get back out to Camp Ripley, even though we're in a COVID-19 pandemic, and still push through with our training. As far as the criminal complaints go for January, I'll just kind of highlight what we're seeing the most of. The 3 o'clock position, help me out with the color, Deb, 14%, 3 o'clock position, putting you on the spot.
Or like teal?
Sure, let's go with teal. All right, we had disturbing the peace, 13 complaints. In the 8 o'clock position, the light blue, we had 22 thefts. To break that down, 3 of them were from a building/yard. 4 of them were thefts from a person. 2 of them were thefts from a vehicle, not the vehicle itself, but from a person. And 10 of those were gas drive-offs and 3 identity thefts. So the number looks somewhat deceiving, 22, it's a lot, but of course 10 of those were gas drive-offs that normally work themselves out in the end anyway, because we get a hold of the registered owner and or the business does, and these people end up paying in the long run. A lot of times it's unintentional, they just strike their card and they don't know that it didn't go through. Any questions on that at all? Next thing we're going to look at is our traffic citations. 300 traffic citations, which is probably the most I've ever seen since I've been sheriff, since 2015. Last month, we had 217. If you remember, we talked last month, just stepping up our staff, our visibility, increasing our patrols, especially to the problem areas where they're seeing a lot of thefts and suspicious activity. So we're trying to be more proactive, making more traffic stops, staying active to deter criminal activity. So proud of our staff. They're really stepping up their game and doing everything they can. I went back to January of 2020 just to do a comparison to see where we're at, and we had 88 total traffic citations in 2020 in January. So you can tell these guys are really going at it and doing the best job they can and doing good things for our community. So when you look at that puzzle itself, how it's broke down, the bottom pink.
Mr. Chair, that would be salmon, I think.
The bottom portion, 194 verbal warnings. We had 35 written warnings, and then on the top, 28 speeds. And then the rest is just all miscellaneous traffic stops that we made. Our 2-year comparison, you'll notice that the total complaints went up. You'll also notice our non-criminal complaints went up, as well as criminal. So the total complaints and the non-criminal complaints, you can see there's a large margin there. And that's again because of our traffic stops that are made, as well as our permit to purchase and our carry permits are continuing to come in as well. And then, of course, the total inmates, that's down, and that's again because of our pandemic. And I'll explain more about that when we go into our jail. Talk about our jail. So our total amount of inmates is 23 we averaged for Morrison County. And if you take our out-of-county inmates, we averaged 25. You'll see that our out-of-county inmates was 7 for the month of January, so we did bring in $3,025. One thing we did do this last month was we brought in some inmates from Itasca County. And the nice thing was they were in custody for 2 weeks prior to coming over to Morrison County. So they're already screened, pre-screened. They went through the isolation process. So it's a matter of just getting them here and then putting them in our general population. So we're going to continue to try that trend where they're already pre-screened and isolated. Therefore, it's not going to take any jail cells away, any isolation cells away from us here at Morrison County. The other thing is we've been in conversations with Men Correctional Care. That's our jail health care representatives. And we're meeting with them immediately after this meeting. And we're looking to basically loosen up some of our restrictions here. And hopefully be able to shift things around, look at some different testing opportunities, whether that's rapid testing, look at our screening process, and just try and figure out a way where we can actually bring in more inmates. So that'll be going on after this meeting. Any questions for me on anything?
Anybody got any questions? Commissioner Blaine, you look like you do.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff Larson, noticing that the legislature's looked at a number of I think there's over 2,000 bills that have been introduced since the beginning of this session, and just looking at some things that were highlighted through the state counties, Minnesota Association of Counties. A couple of pieces of legislation that I was curious if there had been communication with the Sheriff's Association on what appears to me is some loosening on regulations on people who have had driver's licenses suspended or taken away, and not having these individuals having to come back to court if they are stopped again after they've had if they get caught for driving while their license has been suspended or taken away. And so I guess my question is there dialogue between these state legislators and, let's say, the Sheriff's Association on the impact of pending legislation?
So Commissioner, yeah, it's a good question. So what we do is we have representatives from the Minnesota Sheriff's Association that sit on a legislative board, and those conversations exist, and then the information is brought back to us. We've been informed that they're at the table and there's discussions, but I haven't been informed in what detail that how it's going to impact us. Because as of right now, currently, it's not impacting us. If we see somebody on the road, we did this not too long ago, where they've been pulled over and cited multiple times, and the system's just not working, and they're not getting it. So what we'll do is we'll look at that and we'll say, wait a second, there's a pattern here. They're driving again. They were just cited and or released from jail. The only way they're gonna learn is if they go back to jail. So I guess to answer your question, yes, there's been talks how that's taking place and the conversations are taking place, but just not a detailed roadmap layout as of yet, how that's gonna impact us.
Well, it's good to hear that there is that communication back to local law enforcement, and we have the ability to voice our opinion as far as how this affects our community or our county going forward, and in providing public safety out there too. And I'll just say, Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to say, Sean, thank you to you and your staff. You've had a couple pretty tough weeks here, right behind us here. But we appreciate you being here this morning and your department's work on some tough situations here.
Thank you, Commissioner, I appreciate that.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Sheriff, just a quick comment, if I may, regarding mutual aid. Seems like it's been in the news a lot as of late, going way back, of course, into the issues that took place in the cities last summer. On Thursday, I believe, I'll be on a public safety committee with the Association of Minnesota Counties at their legislative conference, if you will. And my guess is that the conversation will at least be brought up regarding mutual aid. Just so I'm on the right page, I believe I know, but if you're asked by another agency to come and give them a hand, and you have personnel that you're able to, whether it's 1, 2, or half a dozen, doesn't matter, to be able to send them to that event, you're really not looking for anything in return other than when I need help, I'm gonna call on you also to reciprocate, if you will. Am I correct on that?
You are correct, Commissioner, although if it's a pre-planned event, the county, the Sheriff's Association, as well as the City Chiefs Association, they're working together to try to figure out if this is pre-planned, we already are gonna be aware of it.
Yep.
They're trying to bind some language, if you would, some memorandums to come together, so it looks a little bit better versus just sending people.
Okay.
And of course, if it's pre-planned and the state steps in and there's funding available, there's also some restitution that could
Yep.
be coming back our way, depending on what event it is as
Yep,
well.
absolutely.
So,
In the event that it's not a Homeland Security, emergency management, there's gonna be money that's gonna come back, or whatever, there really isn't gonna be money that's gonna come back, that's exactly what we do. If somebody needs help, we help, and we ask for that same help through mutual aid the same way.
absolutely. There's numerous cases here in Morrison County where we receive assistance, and, just in the past, I can tell you from the Brisk homicide case, I can tell you from, just in this last case at the city of Little Falls, where the homicide where we recovered the body in the county, we're bringing in other agencies as well. So it's basically, you're right, it's just a call that's made. Sometimes we call the duty officer if it's a big case and it's an emergency.
Yep.
And the duty officer through the state will delegate and kind of work through the different channels. But if it's something that's immediate and I need it now, I'm probably not going to waste my time. I'm going to contact the neighboring agencies where we need bodies, we need people here now. And then everything will fall into place. But you're right, it's just mutual verbal agreements between all agencies.
And just one more follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, and this works, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those same lines, Sheriff, can you give us an update on the involvement of law enforcement now with the Enbridge 3 line? We had that was a place where we had provided mutual aid, correct, or at least prepared to do that, and we haven't talked about that now with the new administration and the suspension of that pipeline, or at least that project, and the talk of the suspension. Is that still a part of our planning process, or is that issue now still?
So Commissioner, they have like an emergency, like a EOC, Emergency Operations Center, and kind of the same thing plays where if there's any need for assistance in the northern counties impacted by the Line 3 pipeline, they will make a request, and it'll hit all of our agencies at the same time, Sheriff's Office, small town PDs. And at that point, depending on what's going on, how many people we have available, we communicate that way. And then we will delegate and send personnel depending on what's going on. So that's still ongoing. As far as I know, it hasn't impacted the line 3. There's other impacts, of course, that they've either stopped the construction, but line 3, as far as I've been informed, it hasn't impacted, it's not gonna stop it.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Winter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could clarify for me, Sheriff, when we send officers, again, let's use down to Minneapolis, when you talk about funding or, we help them, they help us. But to clarify for myself, if you send X amount of officers down there, who is actually paying for them for when they're there? Is it the county that requests them? Because I know the mutual aid is it bodies, or is it bodies and we take the bill of, just in case, we might need them? Could you kind of explain that for me?
I can, I'll do the best of my ability, but like line 3, there's an example where the state's already involved, it's pre-planned. So that portion, if we were to assist and help out, you keep track of your hours and the state will reimburse us at some point. If it's something that's on plan, like the George Floyd incident, there's no money that's really set aside. So at that point, it's up to the agency that sends the personnel to pay for those people. And I can tell you that we've been pretty fortunate because we have a patrol sergeant that we sent that I guess he's not in the schedule per se, so he can flex his hours. At the time, we had another officer who was working undercover, so we didn't have to pay for that portion. So then realistically, we had a couple PD guys and then one from Pierce. So at the end of the day, did it cost us money? Yes. But did it cost us overtime money and money that we didn't budget for? Not really, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
And, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jelinski?
that being said, tomorrow we have a tornado in Morrison County and we need bodies. You would then make that call, if you will, and you would anticipate that these same people would come from another agency, would come to help you.
Correct, Commissioner. I'd call the duty officer immediately, let them know what we're looking at, what resources we need. But in the interim, I'm going to be contacting every neighboring agency that can bring all the resources needed just to take care of the immediate problem that we're facing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for
Thank you.
answering all these questions.
You bet.
Okay, next we will move on to social service. Brad and Bonnie,
Have a good day, Sheriff.
welcome.
See you.
Welcome, Brad.
Morning, Brad.
Morning, Bonnie.
Morning, Bonnie.
I'll let Bonnie get settled. The first thing we have on our agenda is our collections report, and we do this annually. Collections is a service we do both for our agency and the services we provide, where we are able to collect from individuals, as well as we do some collection on behalf of the state of Minnesota. And so I'm going to turn over to Bonnie, and she has a few graphs in your board report as well.
Good morning. So the first graph I have is only showing 2 years because we implemented a new tracking system in 2019. So we're tracking everything the same way, so we have better numbers to look at, really. That's showing that we took in over 41,000 more than we budgeted for. So graph number 2 shows our MA estate recoveries, which is the county share 125,000. So that's where we may have put liens on properties, different things like that to reimburse for the medical assistance expenditures. So with the estate recoveries, we have a new tool that we're just starting to use, which is probate. So we have 3 of them started in different phases of the process right now. Most of our estate recoveries are cooperation with the family, basically. But if they are uncooperative, then we've decided to take this next action and do the probate. Also, if there's over $75,000 in assets, then we need to look at that as well. But so we're just getting started with that, and hopefully it all goes well, and we'll continue to collect on those monies as well.
Just one additional comment I might make about us doing probate. Sometimes the family knows that they may not receive any funds from the estate if they were to go ahead and do it. Again, most families are cooperative, the vast majority. But if they know that they might not be getting any funds out of the estate, they might say, we're not gonna touch it, you do whatever you want with it. That's a rarity, but that is something we've run into now over the last couple months. So another reason we might have to probate an estate.
Okay, so when we collect for the public assistance reimbursements, we actually collect for the feds, the state, and the county. And the county's portion of that ranges anywhere from 13 to 50% that we get to keep. So we do the collections, and then we get a share of that. Graph number 3 just shows how we get our payments, which is mainly by third-party check. That's the big portion. Others, some of them don't actually come into our collections piece, like the restitution and such, but they are out on the agency collection system, so it seems appropriate to just list them there. We have started collecting in 2 new areas, child care overpayments, which we collected a total of over $2,600. And the county share of that was almost $1,000, which includes $400 of interest. So, looking at more ways that we can do collections to bring additional monies in for the county. The other thing that we started new is collecting on North Star and adoption assistance payments for parental fees. So if a adopted child or kinship child ends up in foster care placement, the family would continue to receive those payments unless the county steps in and says, we're paying for the foster care, so we want those payments. So then the state will redirect those payments to us. If the parents are uncooperative in that situation, then we bill them and we start our process of maybe looking at judgments and different things. But so far, we've been lucky. We have a few cases out there. We've collected over $10,000 on that. And it's been through cooperation with the parents, so no issues. And the last new category that we're reporting on is county burials. We've always collected on these, but we're now tracking them as a separate category. So we collected over $3,700 on that, which is 100% county dollars as well. We're able to obtain judgments on certain claims. Depends on the kind of claim. We try not to do it unless we're put in a position where we have no cooperation. Then it's one way that we can start to receive interest on it and things like that. So we actually collected over $7,400 in interest, which was up over $3,000 from the prior year. So getting those judgments takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth the money. We also set up claims on revenue recapture, so we'll recapture state income tax and property tax refunds to apply toward debts. We put a new detox policy into place last year. Brad and I had come and talked to the board about setting up the new rates and such. So we have pretty good details on that now. So we've actually collected over $17,000 on the detox. So that was a pretty big number. We've also now started putting the federal poverty guidelines amounts into effect the first of the year, so we're collecting those additional monies and making sure that we're not collecting from people that really don't have the ability to pay. So the last slide really just shows how our money comes in and what programs we collected on, so it's just accumulation of the data that we have. The only one that looks a little different is the public assistance is showing a -1% right now. That's all kinds of programs, childcare, food stamps, general assistance, MSA. And that number just fluctuates because of the timing of the claims, how the state or feds reimburse us and such. So it's the number that shows up, but really doesn't mean much for us at this point.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Bonnie? Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bonnie, good morning. I do have a question for you. In a few slides back, you had talked about recovery of overpayment to child support or childcare. I'm curious, so where are we finding that overpayment? Is that through audit, through your office or your department, or is this overpayment of revenue that comes from the state or the federal government, and it's through their audit that we find this overpayment? Can you just help clarify that for me?
Sure. First of all, if I said child support, I apologize, and I may well have, because that's the other portion I supervise, so.
That may be on me. I may
Okay.
have wrote that incorrect, but you're
Okay.
referring to child care, though, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And what it is our financial team, when they see that an overpayment has been issued, they now report it to Steve, our collections officer, and he takes the steps to get that money coming back in. Whereas before, they would just attempt to collect it through the childcare payment. So if somebody was overpaid, they would add 10% on or whatever to try to collect what is owed in the past. So this now, people are actually being held to task to make sure that we're collecting those monies.
And if I could just add on to that, the Child Care Assistance Fund is a federal program passed on to the state, passed on to us, so it isn't, we're not dispersing county dollars, we're dispersing federal and state dollars. We see that they were overpaid, they might have not acknowledged enough income, so maybe they received more income than they had acknowledged on their application, so that's why they get an overpayment.
Very good. That helps explain how an overpayment can happen there too, and how we catch that.
So they might not have told us they got a new job or a raise or some other variable that might have come into play relative to the income they received.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski?
How do we go about finding that out? Somebody gives Bonnie a call and says, guess what? Jeff just got an increase at his job. How do you go about finding that out?
Well, it is the financial team, either through documents that a person supplies them on a regular basis, so their attention to detail.
Okay.
It might be a neighbor, a family member calls us to let us know that, hey, we found out that they got a new job.
Okay.
Did they report it? We know they're getting childcare assistance or MFIP. So there's a variety of ways in which we might find that out. And then every so often, we'll do our fraud report to the board, and we have a fraud investigator that is employed by Benton County that works in this region. So then they will do some investigating to determine whether or not those allegations may be true or not. And sometimes it might be that the person just says, oh, shoot, I forgot to report that extra income, timing, whatever the case might be. And other times, they might truly just be trying to collect more than they're entitled.
Very good, thank you.
Bonnie, I have a question. On slide number 1, the collection unit has exceeded budget. I'm trying to figure out, wouldn't your budget be everything owed? Or or not? Can you explain that to me? And maybe you did explain it to me and I didn't hear it, I don't know.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm new into the budgeting
Okay,
piece,
okay.
obviously, so maybe Brad can explain it.
So the county board expects us to budget every year. We try to do the best we can, and this is one of those variable areas within the budget that we never are quite sure what we're going to receive. So there may be years we don't get an MAS state that is worth any money, and there's other times that we've gotten MAS states and collected 250,000, and we keep, like in a state of 250,000, we would keep 50%? 25% of that. So we never quite know how much we're going to receive from MAS states is probably the biggest variable in our budgeting. So we're required to put some revenue in there.
Okay, I got you.
And it's always revenue, and whether or not we reach that or not. And of course, our fiscal supervisor, Jim, tends to budget a little conservatively. But we usually do take a 5-year snapshot of what we collected and average it out that way. So that's why we never quite know what the percentage might be.
Thanks for that explanation. I was just thinking if they owe you $300,000, you want to collect $300,000, but I understand where you're going. So thank you very much for that. Okay, anything else? Then we'll move on to Brad, I guess. You got something else, Brad?
I just have a
you,
public
Bonnie.
health report and just a
Thanks,
very,
Bonnie.
thank you,
Thanks,
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
And thank you, Steve. Steve is back there, watching what a supervisor has to say, so.
Thanks, Steve.
I just have just a brief update on COVID-19 and the public health report. We have no food, beverage, or lodging licenses, which is why I put it on there. But in the last 14 days, our case rate has dropped to 6.34. So last Tuesday it was 9.67. So again, continues to be good news. Our total case count is 3,188. And that's only up from 9 last Tuesday when I reported at planning. We've had no new cases in long-term care, which is very positive. And I do know that we have a couple of pharmacies in Morrison County who are part of the federal program, so they are going to get some vaccine. What they get, they don't know, but there is a website they can go to and register at those 2 pharmacies to get on the list. They still have to meet the guidelines of the 65-plus healthcare, so it can't just be a 40-year-old healthy person getting in line. It's still any pharmacy or any other organization vaccinating has to still follow the state guidance on which part of the line they're in, so.
Mr. Commissioner Blaine?
Can you identify the 2 pharmacies for us?
I can, they are Walgreens in Little Falls and Thrifty White in Pierce. So I know Thrifty White has been taking some appointments online. I think both are doing them through an online web portal. But it's still, the caveat is it's still very limited vaccine, and everybody that wants a vaccine at this point is not able to access a vaccine.
How did your second shot go? You had your group, I think, start, and you were going to kind of report if anybody was getting sick, or?
It sounds like it's so far so good as far as the normal reactions. Some are not having any, others are having a few chills, fever, achiness, but nothing major.
Good.
So we've had 2 second shot vaccine clinics. And I think it's this Wednesday is our largest vaccine second shot clinic, so.
Good. Have you noticed schools, since they've been back and everybody there, any numbers on that coming up at all? Have been pretty low?
Pretty low. It shows our case rate data continues to be low. I know there are a few teachers in some of the schools that have come through on the case list being positive, but I know looking on the list this morning, there were 4 school age of those 21. So again, knock on wood, I think everybody's now back in session full-time, all of the grades. I know some have never really gone out of school, so just hope that this trajectory continues or at least is maintained.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Brad? If not, I thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Brad. Have a good day.
Does anybody need a break?
She's here, she's on the phone, I'm
Yeah.
showing something. Maybe, actually, I think Jean, you're kind of, where did you go? Oh, here she is.
Nope. I gave them the opportunity for a break and they didn't take it, so.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Day in paradise.
right, I've got a couple of things for you. I cannot read that.
The Board of Equalization, Appeal and
Okay.
Equalization.
So, first I need to set the date for the 2021 County Board of Appeal and Equalization. We do have a window of time that we need to do that. We like to do that on the first end, that gives our appraising and assessing staff a little bit more time to react to the decisions that you make there. So we're looking at, wondering if June 14th would work. That would be a 5 PM meeting.
Works for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure it does.
It's Flag Day, but it'll
14th?
work for me.
June
Day.
14th, yes.
Monday.
What time?
5. We have to offer a 7 PM appointment, but we do take appointments, so if we don't have anybody that asks for an appointment at that time, then we typically adjourn early.
I need to get a motion on that, right? It says
I
action.
think just setting, I don't think we need action to set it,
No,
correct?
I just need to, yep, that'll, We
Mr.
just
Chair,
need to
if
set
I
the
may,
date.
Amy, I know what it means, but for the world out there, what does Board of Appeal and Equalization, give the short version? What's it for?
the County Board of Appeal and Equalization is what happens after the local boards of appeal and equalization have occurred. So if someone does not agree with the value that the county has arrived at, they have an opportunity to go in front of their local Board of Appeal and Equalization to really bring any sort of paperwork or evidence that points that the value isn't correct. Then that local Board of Appeal makes a decision, and if the property owner is still aggrieved, I guess, of that decision, then that can come before the County Board of Appeal and Equalization. They must go to their local Board of Appeal and Equalization prior to attending the county,
So when you say local, township boards?
township and city.
Cities.
Yes.
So they would have that?
So all of those will have occurred prior to this, prior to the June 14th.
So if they don't go to the township board?
They're not eligible to come in front of the county.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
That
thank
date
you.
Sounds good.
All right, and then the next item I have is to approve the contract extension for support of the current cama system until 2023. You may recall, oh gosh, it's been a little while, we talked about that we are going to be changing our assessment software. And our current provider is providing support for the system that we've got. Because that process is taking longer than what anyone anticipated, because we're working with companies that need to get a Minnesota product ready, they have offered an extension for the support of the current software we're on. And this is the formal agreement to enter into to continue that support to 2023. We anticipate, hopefully, by, the end of 2023, we will have identified who we are going to be switching to and have been working towards that. But we certainly are not there yet, and so we are asking to enter into this contract extension for support of our current software.
Mr. Chair, I'll move on that.
Okay, we got a motion. by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? None, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
All right, that's all I have.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you, Miss
gentlemen.
Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Next, extension report.
Mr. Chair, I don't see extension online. She's on her way. Oh, in person. Okay, okay.
Okay. Becky will be here shortly, so,
Thanks, Gene.
yep, thank you.
Bye.
Welcome, Becky. Yes, it was. We heard you were on your way, so,
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice to see you all today. Just a quick update from the Extension Office. There's many things within the board report that the other educators have been working on. I wanted to highlight a couple of things that I have been working on. One of them has been some virtual animal science programming. And we've been working more as a region, the educators within the Northeast region, and doing a lot of virtual programming. And Morrison County is a heavily animal science area county, and there really hadn't been much programming that was being done. So I requested that we look into this. And what started as a 6-week program has morphed into 3 8-week sessions. And so we're going to hopefully incorporate some in-person activities as well. And so the first in the series has been choosing your project animal, and that's been virtual. And then the second 8-week series will be on showmanship, and the third one will be on fitting and grooming your animal for the fair. And so the next series starts March 18th, and we're hoping to have that in-person component. So if a youth wanted to come, we could set up the virtual aspect if the presenter is not here in Morrison County, so they could come with an animal, experience the presentation, and also practice on their animal at the same time. And so I'm working through the logistics of that right now, but I think we're going to be able to pull it off. The animal science projects are really important to youth in Morrison County, and unfortunately, it's really hard to read or listen and figure out how to do things. And so we're hoping this in-person component will be very helpful and a good resource for them as well. We're also recording all of the sessions too. And so we've kind of wrapped up re-enrollment and chartering with the clubs, and now we're working on winter programming and rolling into the spring and summer, working on a summer intern for Morrison County. So hopefully we'll be doing some more in-person things as well and able to offer some programming to the county as well.
Does anybody have any questions for Becky?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you can.
When do you think the decision about the fair is going to be made? I know that's kind of been a question that's been asked among colleagues of mine, whether they're having them or not having them, or when you decide and how to do that.
So that is a great question. What's going on is currently the Morrison County Ag Society has announced fair dates. And so in my mind, that means they're planning to have an in-person fair, which is really exciting. Does anyone know if it's actually going to happen? Not with 100% certainty, but I can tell you that the Minnesota State 4-H program has decided that they would like each and every county in Minnesota to offer some sort of an in-person event for the kids, whether they have a county fair to go along with it or just the achievement day, but something in person. And of course, Morrison County did that last year. And so one way or the other, whether we coordinate with a county fair or without a county fair, the 4-H program will do something in person and have an achievement day for the youth of Morrison County. I must say personally, I hope it's in coordination with the county fair. I missed all my snacks and treats at the county fair last year, and seeing all of the people and vendors that come out and everything about a fair just is extraordinarily fun for me personally. So I hope so, and that's really not an answer with any definitivity in it, but that's what we're dealing with right now. Yep. We're planning. We're securing judges. Gloria's sending out emails actually as I speak. So we're moving forward with assuming that we will have a county fair.
Thank you. Nothing else? We thank you, Becky.
Thank you very
you,
much.
Becky.
Have a great day.
Okay, next, Public Works, Steve. Good morning.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, Steve.
I built up some RBAs for you gentlemen today.
Got a few of them there.
All righty. Let's start off with, we have the matrix for the distribution of the annual township road allotments. The amount allotted to Morrison County this year is the $555,223. The formula that was adopted previously when town road came into existence was 50% based on population, 50% based on mileage. Based on that criteria, these are the distributions. Those funds are a pass-through through our department's fund. So we'd request that the board would authorize us to make these payments to the townships.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Lemire. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the next request for board action is a resolution establishing our priority list for bridge replacement. We went through these bridges in detail at our planning meeting. So the board's well aware of the structures that are on the list, how they get on the list, and where we're at with establishing this priority list and how we use it for obtaining funding. We are on track for our 2021 replacements, which is the Little Elk River Bridge on CASA 1 north of Randall. Plans are under review. We've worked with the Department of Natural Resources in accommodating the Camp Ripley Veterans State Trail on that structure. All those things are coming together, and I fully expect that we're going to be able to advertise and let that project sometime later this spring. The other one is a town bridge replacement with Two Rivers and Elmdale Townships on 100th Avenue. And that one also is under review. We're working with the townships on acquiring right-of-way. The rest of that gives us years and goals for us as we move forward in replacing these structures into the future. So we have adjusted this for what we believe we can accomplish over the next number of years, and we'd request that the board would authorize this resolution so that we can work off of it into the future as we work to replace these structures.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I got a motion by Commissioner
Second.
Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Is there any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, request for board action number 3 is an agreement with Benton County. Benton County was a lead agency on the reconstruction of County Road 78 in Benton County and our County Road 286. It was a half a mile of Buckman Township Road that we took over. We worked with them in reconstructing it. They have applied and were successful in obtaining funds for a highway safety improvement project, which is ground-in wet reflective edge line. And so this agreement splits out the cost between Benton and Morrison. Our cost is like $5,200. It's a relatively minor amount of the overall project cost, but because it's federal funds, they require an agreement, and that's what this is.
Can we get a motion on that?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, then, request for board action number 4 is that the department was approached by the Snowmobile Association, the Recreational Trail Association for Morrison County, looking for our assistance and support in making an application to obtain funds to update the groomer for the snowmobile trails. This is a federal recreational trail grant, which the department's quite familiar in making these applications. The funds that we've received for the improvements on the Sioux Line Trail Bridge over the Mississippi River have mainly been federal recreational trail grant funds. And so what this request is to authorize us to make the application. If we're successful with the application, the matching funds, the Trail Association has agreed that they would provide any kind of matching funds needed in order to acquire the groomer, which there will be. We would enter into an agreement with them for that at that time. And then we also would have some type of a lease arrangement, because the state essentially would maintain ownership for the groomer. It's passed on through the county, and then we pass it to the Trail Association through a lease agreement. We're able to trade that up over time as it needs to be replaced. So if you keep this going, it should work that way, where we can get some outside resources to support this. And so the first step, though, would be that we would get our initial funding so that we can then put those things in place and work towards this being the way they help pay for their groomer into the future.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Winchester. Any further discussion? None? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the next number of requests for board action are sponsorship agreements for local government agencies within our county that are seeking funds through the local road improvement program to make improvements to their infrastructure within their jurisdiction. Most of our small cities do not have many opportunities to apply for other resources to make improvements to infrastructure. Those cities that are smaller than 5,000 in population, there's just not a lot of programs that have developed for them. They're working on that. I think there's going to be more of those type of things coming up into the future for the small cities. The townships have had more opportunities. They've got the town bridge account, the town road account, which comes out of the Highway User Trust Fund. So they've been eligible for that for some time. They've obtained, there's been pretty good funding for them over the years through that. There's also currently some other funding that they're trying to put into place that would only be for township road improvements. But these are competitive programs. It's not that you can really count on them like you can count on our county state aid highway allotment, so you can plan and put those projects together. These you have to apply for, you have to be successful, then you have to go through the whole process of putting the project together. But one of the things, because they're not set up to handle these type of funds, and most of all that federal funding for road and bridge and state funding for road and bridge is funneled through the public works of the highway departments. Town bridge, that's all funded through us. Any federal funds that for peers, for safe routes to schools or transportation alternatives, they're all funded through us because we have the mechanism and we have the setup that the state knows is in place so that those funds are handled appropriately. This becomes another program that, this local road improvement program, that these jurisdictions are eligible for, but it requires that we sponsor these and that we have some obligations under that sponsorship to keep those projects on track, that there is local funding for their match, those type of things. And we pass that obligation, those terms and conditions, back down to the local jurisdiction if they want us to be a sponsor and they want us to support them and work with them in trying to put a project together through our sponsorship agreements. So these jurisdictions that are included here have all entered into a sponsorship agreement that we would also ask the board to enter into. And with that sponsorship agreement in place, then we would execute a sponsorship resolution so that they could make an application for funds. Under this local road improvement program, there's 3 funds in it. One is where a local unit of government can apply to pay for improvements that may be their share of a trunk highway improvement. So if there was a overpass going in and there was some local cost to that overpass going in, this would be a program that the local unit could apply for to pay for their share of it. Another one is safety improvements on the county state aid highway system. There are certain projects that would be eligible. That's a second fund within the local road improvement program. And then the third one is routes of regional significance. And that's what the small cities and our townships and the other local units of government are eligible for. And it's kind of all encompassing. Almost everything may be, under the way it's defined, eligible, but the criteria that you use is much tougher, and there's a lot of competition, and you have to have good projects in order to be successful and get these funds. But we do have some projects that, especially our small cities that are included here. The first one being the city of Royalton, in which they are looking to update Chestnut Street and South Birch Street. These are on the west side of Highway 10 in their economic, or their industrial park, kind of back behind what used to be Newman Manufacturing. Part of this will be used as detours when they're upgrading on Highway 10. That's another advantage that Royalton may have in getting this put in place. And so they're making the request that the board sponsor this, this application. The map is included to show you the two streets that are included. They've included an executed sponsorship agreement. And so we'd ask that the board would authorize the administrator and the chairman to enter into the agreement, and then authorize the support resolution that we would pass on to the city so they can make their application.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Winter, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Lemire. Is there any further discussion? You know, we haven't had a lot of discussion on these, but we have talked about all these at Public Works and gone through this whole thing. I think that's why the board doesn't have a lot of questions on these.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next request for board action is similar. It's for the city of Pierce. They want to make a improvement to Centennial Drive between Trunk Highway 27 and our County State Aid Highway 43. Map is included. We have sponsored this one previously. They weren't successful in obtaining funds previously. But they've entered into a agreement, and also we have the resolution included. And it would be similar, that you'd authorize the chairman and the administrator to execute the agreement, and then authorize the resolution that we'd get to the city of Pierce so they can make their application.
Commissioner Wilson will make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Winter. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There was a request for board action 7. Little Falls Township had decided to withdraw this application at this time. They're going to proceed in a little different manner, so that one is, we're not going to consider today. Request for board action number 8 and 9 is with the city of Motley. Number 8 is for Cemetery Road, which is, it runs east and west, just south of the water tower, from Highway 10 to the west city limits of the city of Motley. And they have, they've entered into their agreement, and they've also, the resolution is included, and we're requesting the same thing, in that you authorize the chairman and the administrator to execute the agreement, and then authorize the support resolution that we can get to the city of Motley so they can make their application.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Chairman, members of the board, then is the final one, the Harrison Street and First Avenue, which is, it is between highway, or east, on the east side of Highway 10. It's kind of a 2-block stretch in there that the city is trying to complete, to tie those streets together. They've executed their agreement for this project. The resolution for our support is also included. So we're asking that the chairman and the administrator would be authorized to execute the agreement and approve the resolution so that we can get it to the city of Motley so they can apply for this application.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Just an additional comment, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. One of the reasons why we're seeing, I think, a substantially larger number of these is that the last bonding bill that was approved by the legislature had $75 million go into the local road improvement program. And I think that the League of Minnesota Cities and the Township Association, you know, they're really putting out a lot of information. They should be working towards these funds. And so I think that we'd anticipate that as time goes on, and if they keep funding it to those type of levels, we're gonna be involved to a greater extent than we have in the past.
Mr. Chair, as far as I'm concerned, this is doing nothing more than supporting our local towns, our local cities, and it's a win-win all the way around. I appreciate everything that you do for this, Steve, so.
I think it really has some good benefits to it, as long as, you know, there's always strings attached when you're getting funding from the state. As long as, and as you've seen, these cities have an engineer, and they're working with their engineer, and I think they know what they're getting into. That's a real advantage, that you don't just get into this and then you run into some of the things that are local costs that you didn't anticipate, and it's more than you wanna have to deal with. That could be a problem in some situations.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to take a recess here.
Yep.
Perfect. Yep, break it is, eh? It says break.
Says
We're going
break.
to have a
That's what
public
we're
hearing.
for.
We're gonna recess, take a short break, and then convene a drainage authority meeting during that break, and then
Perfect.
get back to the board meeting following that.
Thank you for helping me out on that, Deb. I seen Steve get up. I thought he was leaving us.
No, I didn't know when that break was gonna take place.
Commissioner Blaine, you know, you could make a motion, or you can second something. Do I have to hit you, or do I have to just put your
Yep,
name
you
in
send
there?
me
Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Blaine. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Approval of the final payment. Steve, you're gonna go through that? Or not?
I just wanted to notify the board that you had authorized us to move forward on both of these repairs, Public Ditch 16 and 16-1. That is included in one, will be in one assessment. And then earlier this year, you also authorized us to do a repair on Public Ditch 11. That was the one that we did through just receiving comments through either email or by mail, and reported that to you. We have completed that repair also. And so we're ready for you to authorize the auditor's treasurer's office to move forward with the assessments and invoicing.
Did we come out pretty close to what we estimated?
Do you have the totals on? Yes, the ditch 11 was less. I think ditch 11 was.
I think 16 was less too.
I-
So, public ditch 11, the total amount was $26,398.99. And 16 was $64,207.32. I believe we projected
75,000 on 16,
Okay.
and we were at 45,000 on 11. So we came in fairly reasonably under.
Sounds good.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve final payment.
I'll second for more
We have a
discussion.
motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Wincher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, it's not important if you don't have the information. How many, for each ditch, how many property owners were impacted, do you know? Or- and it's not a- You do, okay.
Yep, I have that number, and I was just gonna go over the process of reviewing of invoicing and special assessments. Public ditch 11 had roughly 37 owners, and public ditch 16 had roughly 99 owners, so much difference. We have the maps here to show you the areas of the benefited areas. So that's just a visual, and when we talk about invoicing and special assessment, we hold a drainage authority meeting to get approval for final payment, and then as far as invoicing and assessment, that is to be held by the Morrison County Board of Commissioners meeting. So that is why we recessed here now, and then we'll move forward into the county board meeting.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to kind of go on that, how many, like the ditch 16, you had 99 owners roughly. How long was that ditch?
10 miles, just a little over 10 miles.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what constitutes an owner? I think that's a good question. It's one that I don't necessarily know exactly what constitutes an owner.
I can, sure. So for the ditch authority, looking back on the benefited owners, we have an auditor's tabulator statement that was drawn, and our original is back from the 1900s. And so that determines the benefited area of the ditch. And so we take that original record, and the auditor treasurer's office updates those records up to current owners who are on the property, and the layout of the benefited area, whether there was splits, combines, or change of hands in ownership.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very kindly.
And if I may, just
Commissioner Wincher?
thank you, Mr. Chair. And if anyone has any questions, I'm sure you guys would be happy to take them, to ask them how they decided they were a benefited property owners. Thank you. A lot of work involved.
Just for clarification, though, you know, some owners, some people have a bigger piece of this pie just because they happen to own more of the land along that area. You know, it's not divided, 64,000 divided by the 90 people or whatever.
Right.
So that's where I get the question sometimes, because some people might have a fourth of this whole bill just because, and, you know, they make the comment that, well, it really doesn't benefit me to do this, but I had asked Steve that question one time, and it makes sense to me. Back in 1901, it must have benefited the properties, otherwise they'd have never put a ditch in there, and I would have to agree with that. So I thank you for all those explanations you give me along the way with these projects, because some people get upset because it's quite a bit of money for them. And, but anyway, thank you for getting it done.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, and also to go on, this stays with the property, not the property owner. So if the property owner sold it, that still goes down the line. That owner, next owner is responsible, correct?
That's correct. It's a property right, essentially.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
I'd just like to add one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
The people did have opportunity to come before the board and voice their positive and negative comments on this, and it does show a benefit. That's why we move forward with it, and it is our responsibility to keep the ditches open. So, good job, Steve, and thank you, Chelsea, for being here today.
Commissioner Blank?
I wanted to go back to, and wasn't quick enough to record this or write this down, but, so the estimated costs that we had to do ditch 11 and ditch 16 were what?
So the estimated cost for ditch 11 was 45,000, and it came total amount of $26,398.99. And for 16, our estimate was 75,000, and total amount actual is $64,207.32. Mr. Chair, if I could, just a reminder that when we have our meetings, our public meetings, we have discussed multiple times about redetermining a ditch benefit as well, when we talk about benefits and individuals, if they don't feel that they benefit from the ditch where their land lays. And we've talked about how if you redetermine a ditch, that cost then goes back on to those owners, and they may still be benefited owners. And then on top of that, if you did work, they would also get that assessment, so it'd almost be a double. So just a reminder that we do discuss that as well.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure that we make note of this, that, this seems to be in the past couple of years, the number of ditches that we've looked to address and completed addressing we've been able to do that within our county with numbers that certainly are not exceeding our estimates. We've been able to figure out a way to execute these goals and come in really, I'll just say, under budget, and which really gives us a kind of a good track record when we look forward as we go to, because we're going to keep addressing some of these ditches in that area out, especially out there to the east. And I think it's important to note this, that when we have these discussions on the next ditch to be addressed, that we have a track record in working with the property owners to achieve these goals in a I'm going to say a fairly conservative manner fiscally when it comes to executing this. So I think it's good work by our people and the contractors that we're working with, and I think also especially the timing of this through Steve's oversight and his department working with them. We're doing these things at a time where we have the ability to go in, and we've had 2 years of, this past year was pretty good, but years before that were not exactly the greatest opportunities for us to go working in some not very nice conditions. So I wanted to thank you, Mr. Chair, because I want to make that point. I think it's an important one as we go forward.
Steve, I got a question for you too. Could you explain why we're doing this? Because I think the answer is that we've talked about before, the ground reclaims the ditches, and we can't identify some of those that we might not be able to clean out. Am I right on that? Or,
Well, most of the ditches in our county, which we have about 86 miles of it, were built in the early 1900s. And I think there were some repairs done early on when those ditches were originally constructed, but then as commodities dropped off and the cost of the work, they've gone up, there wasn't a big push to keep the ditches repaired, even though that obligation existed. And so, we find ourselves in a situation where we are working to try to catch up for things that were not kept up totally the way they should have been. And in that time period, new laws come into play and new regulations, and that's one of them that when we get to a point, if we don't take care of these and repair the ditch to its original construction, and it does go back to, let's say, a wetland where you can't detect the ditch, or you have to get into some much more costlier engineering to determine where the ditch was or the extent of the ditch, those are all costs that get passed on and assessed back to those benefiting property owners. And that's why we're working hard to try to get our system in place here and then continue to maintain it.
okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Process review of invoicing and special assessments.
So, just to backtrack a little bit, in 2019, when we came before you with a ditch, we talked about invoicing and the process. So once final payment is approved, I will move forward to the Morrison County Board meeting, requesting approval for invoicing the final payment to the property owners that are benefited for both ditches, and then I will be requesting approval for any unpaid invoices by November 30th of this year to be assessed over a 5-year term with an interest rate of 1% returned to the general fund. Any amounts 250 or less would be assessed within the first year. And we talked about this back in 2019 as far as looking over assessment terms, interest rates, paying back to the general fund. And so I feel that it would be appropriate for both ditch 16 and 11 to be over a 5-year term at a 1% rate back to the general. Any?
Do we need to do a motion on that, or?
Nope, not until we get into the board meeting, but I just wanted any feedback or questions.
Anybody got any questions? I think that'd be great. So, nobody sounds negative against that, so
Okay.
proceed on with that.
All right.
Okay, is there any other business? If not, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Blaine, seconded by Commissioner Wincher. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we will proceed back to our regular board.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, we're back to our regular board meeting. Now we'll have the auditor's report.
Today I have a request before you requesting approval to invoice the final payment for the owners of Public Ditch 16 and 11 as determined by benefit. Again, the Public Ditch 11 total amount is $26,398.99, and Ditch 16 is $64,207.32. I'm also requesting approval for any unpaid invoices by November 30th of this year to be assessed over a 5-year term with an interest rate of 1% returned to the general fund. Any amounts 250 or less to be assessed within the first year.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Blaine.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Any further discussion?
One question, Mr. Chair. Largest assessed parcel or amount in there? Because we're talking about a 5-year assessment period, so I'm just curious what, on either ditch 11 or ditch 16, you know, it was a more costly ditch, a longer ditch, but a more costly one. But if we're looking at giving the opportunity for taxpayers to spread this out over a 5-year period, I'm just curious what that largest assessment would have been to any one individual.
Sure, I don't have the exact number, but I can tell you some of the invoice payments will be anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Next on the agenda, I have the monthly cash report for you to review as of January 31st of this year. So again, this is just a report that you see annually or monthly in the board packet.
Okay.
There's no requirement to approve that. is
It
there?
looks
No.
good to you, Chelsea?
Yes.
Thank you.
You said I am
Getting to our
required to
area
approve
here.
that?
No.
And then next, I have a resolution that is not in the board packet and that is being handed out right now. It is a gambling permit. So this resolution is requesting Scandia Valley First Response Team to hold a bingo on March 21st and November 21st of this year, located at the Scandia Valley Town Hall in Cushing.
Okay, could I get a motion on that?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Jelinski. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
And last but not least, I look forward to getting a motion to approve the board warrants.
Motion to pay all the bills.
Got a motion by Commissioner Wincher, seconded by Commissioner Blaine. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Lemire,
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea.
next we have administration report.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have a couple of items for approval. One is, both are relating to the discussion we had the other day at the building committee to approve the quote from Allstate Communications regarding the video surveillance system and electric work for the safety annex and public works from the building project fund for the amount of $28,555. This was then bringing those two projects into our system that we have for surveillance and security throughout the complex that we did with the building project. So it's a change order request that came in.
Sounds good. Could I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Jelinski, seconded by Commissioner Blaine. Any further discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, sounds good. Mr. Chair, the other request for board action I have is to approve the MEI, from the quote from MEI to replace the controllers and door operators in elevators 1, 2, and 3 for the amount of $155,337.72 from the building fund. As you recall, the conversation we had with John, both the operating system is outdated, and then the door openers aren't in compliance with the current code. And so this was something on the radar to have done for the building, out of the building fund now for a number of years. It's time, the dollars are in the building fund to do that. It's been a planned project moving forward throughout the years.
Okay, could I get a motion?
So
on
move,
that?
Mr. Chair.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lemire, seconded by
Blaine.
Commissioner Blaine. Any further discussion? Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, on maybe Deb, because John was here. John mentioned that there was 105,000 already put into the building fund, or is that part of his building fund that we just actually pay each year to maintain anything? And that was a question I forgot to ask him. So again, he said there's $105,000 in there that's put away for these elevators, or is that, he's just taking that out because we're gonna maintain the carpet or whatever? You know, I don't know if you understand that?
Does anybody else recall that from our conversation? I'm kind of drawing a blank there on what it is we talked about. Every year we levy dollars into the building fund and we have a capital plan that's laid out for projects or, maintenance that needs to come due. And so that levy amount on a regular basis goes in. I'm not certain where the 105, I'm not recalling that, Commissioner Winter. I'm sorry about
I
that.
think that's, the 105 came to what's left over after we take out what's left over from the bonding proceeds.
See, I'm not for
I
sure.
think that's what it was.
I could be wrong, Commissioner Lemire, but if when you're talking about the $105,000 or $110,000 that John was speaking to, my recollection on that and interpretation of that was the amount that John had earmarked to come out of the building fund to address the elevators. If we did that, if we were going to do that this year. Initially, that's what he was kind of earmarking that cost or that amount of money to address these elevators, because it was something on that proverbial list that we had vetted. We had vetted this about addressing that, but.
Do you have those papers from last week?
I have the quote that we got. Was it that, are you referring to that longer building fund list that we had?
And if I may, Mr. Chair.
Or the, not building fund, but the
That
project
dollar
list?
amount, again, maybe if somebody can help me out here, we put so much away for maintenance or whatever.
We already approved the controllers. Maybe that's,
Well, no, but he said he had 105,000, I think Commissioner Jelinski asked that question, how much we had in there. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but then that's where I go back to this additional amount. Is that part of the maintenance, or did we, and I don't remember ever putting 10,000 a year away to do the controllers, see if you understand where I'm saying, so is that just coming out of the maintenance, just because we may not use it this year?
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about with 105. There's not an amount on here with 105.
No, he just, because that question was asked.
105
There we- yeah.
what John put in just as normal expenses for the year that would come out of the building fund. In a
Oh,
normal year, we would spend $105,000.
That's my question.
so it didn't have to do with the elevators. That's why I'm
That's
confused.
my question. So again, it sounded like to me last week that this was, and that's why I don't remember ever putting money just specifically away. So we're taking that 105,000 from regular maintenance that he projected to take care of the elevator. It's not like we designated extra money, just,
He has in his budget or in his capital plan replacement of the elevator. So there's $978,000, just under $1 million in the building fund right now. And so all that was, he came up with a plan, if you look, your report
Yep.
here shows you what he has in his plan to spend the extra dollars that he has in the building fund. And 105, which is regular maintenance items that may come up during the year. Of course, the last few years, that's been less because we've done a lot of remodeling stuff going on. So moving forward, I would assume that number will start to ramp back up again with projects that he's got to take care of or fix things. That's been averaging around $105. I think that's where the number that you were thinking about.
yes, it was. And if I may continue, Mr. Chair. So out of that money, we're taking, we also, again, I know everybody's gonna correct me, but that's part of that general building fund is part of the COVID money. And where we took that, some of that extra that we didn't use, we put that in there in the general fund. Now we don't call it COVID money, we just part of the general fund. Am I not right on that?
It's part of the general fund, but not the building fund.
No, I didn't say building fund, I just said the
you
general
did.
fund. Oh,
Yeah,
did I
okay.
say building
Yeah.
fund? Okay, I'm glad.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. So it went into the general fund. So the building fund, there was no other money put from other outside sources other than that we put away for every year, correct?
Correct, there's $220,000 levy every year that goes into the building fund. Last year, 2019, we transferred that $100,000 from the jail into the building fund. And then this year, when it's completed, I'll bring you in a transfer of whatever those dollars spent on the annex.
So, and again, I'm sure they'll want to know why I voted against the 28,000, because that's coming out of the building fund. But, and so are we going to be taking money from the sheriff's fund to replenish the building fund because of that, correct?
Correct.
And that's where I have a hard time.
Back when we went through this, when we went through the projects, we were trying to find projects that were ready to go, or that were close to going, that would spend this money down. That was one. The annex was one of them that we decided, okay, let's do this because we need to get these dollars spent down quicker. And it was ready to go. I mean, we could get it ready to go and get it done within a time frame that would fit the building project, and that's why we did it. Knowing that there would be other projects that were on that list, that we probably, like the elevators, that we may not get to if we didn't have any money left over, but we also knew we'd be transferring X amount of dollars from that into the building.
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay, then we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
All right.
I had to figure out where I was.
Mr. Chair, that's all I had for action items. If anybody has anything else for me, otherwise, it's for your committee schedules. It's time.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have a point of order and make a motion at this time to reduce the purchasing powers of our administrator. Again, we gave that power to her back in March, April to 15,000. I would like to make a motion, we reduce that back to 5,000. Again, anything with 5,000 or more would have to have board approval.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it for further discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for further discussion. Discussion on that?
If I may, Mr. Chair, again, this was put in place just due to our remodeling of our building and all that sort. And now that we put and kind of button that all up, I don't believe we need to have that power designated to our administrator anymore. And I'd like to have a motion, bring it back down to the original 5,000 that we had at the time.
Okay, any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I don't know what that means. The $15,000 was for change orders with our building project bond proceeds. That's done. That's going to be complete with this last change order. There isn't any type of authority that I have outside of that, so I don't know what you
I did
mean.
make a motion to give you that authority, so therefore I want to take that motion away and give it back.
But
to
it's
you.
only in relation to the building
Well,
project.
I understand that, but again, I just want to clarify that, so.
I don't understand, but that's okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Mr.
Mo-
Chair, if I may, so I want to clarify, Commissioner Wincher, I guess I wasn't here at that time that was put in place.
We put it in like March of 2020, I think it was.
No, that was at the outset
No, and
of the
that's-
building.
and that's, so, Mr. Chair, if I may, that's where I'm going. If you were making a point of order as far as, authorization on spending within the expansion of the courthouse and the building project of the courthouse, that would have probably took place before I ever took office. But if you're talking about the action that was taken recently, Commissioner Wincher, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, but I believe that was authorization to allow her to spend money with, up to a certain degree without having to have us come in and make approval of that in response to the COVID pandemic. Is that correct?
That's not related to that dollar amount though, so I'm not certain if that's, I think the two issues are maybe being confused. I'm not certain, but that's, the pandemic thing is about, in relation to specific pandemic spending or anything that would happen with that, which is essentially kind of a moot point again, because we haven't had anything that's been related to it. As far as the change order amount for the building project, again, somewhat of a moot point because that's complete. Otherwise, all purchasing and spending goes through our purchasing policy that we have as an organization that either is within budget that you approve or each authorized department comes to you for approval specifically. So there isn't a different authority that I as administrator have outside of those two examples that I can think of, which are essentially kind of over.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I'm not trying to debate either one of those two issues. I'm just looking at this from more of a parliamentarian position on this that we have. I'm trying to help Commissioner Wincher to make sure that we have clarity if we're going to take action and vote on something that we know exactly what we're voting on here. And so my good friend.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Blaine, so again, yeah, my point is, again, maybe I'm all confused, which doesn't take much, is that I was under the assumption that we had given our administrator the authority to spend up to $15,000, and granted, it was during COVID or it was during the building project. I just want to make sure that we as a board understand that that is no longer in place, and if we don't need to make a motion, but again, I want it on record that she cannot go ahead and spend any more money unless it's $5,000 or less.
And I think, Mr. Chair, the reason we did that is because it was a constant coming to us with funding requests, and we increased it to that amount to keep the project moving fluently instead of waiting every 2 weeks to get us to vote on something. That was the reason we did this, and if it dies with the end of the project, then I don't see any reason to move forward with this.
Commissioner Blaine?
Well, Mr. Chair, going back to the point I made before, I want to make sure that we're clear about what we're addressing here, and I understand and I respect Commissioner Lemire's point that if this was authority given to her in relation to the building project, then basically we're at the pinnacle point with the building project being completed, then it is kind of a moot point. But I think we should have it on record. But if Commissioner Wincher is talking about the expansion of authority as far as a dollar amount in relation to addressing the COVID pandemic, which I remember that authority being granted, and as you were referencing last spring, or the spring of 2020, which was last spring, in response to COVID, then I want to make sure that that's what we're addressing, one or the other. So I'm going to look to my colleague Commissioner Wincher to help define that for us.
And again, the motion was out there, I just wanted to have discussion whether we have one or not, that it is understood by the board that our administrator no longer can make any decisions. So let's say we do a remodel project maybe in 3 weeks or 3 months, there's always something that could come up. I think as of this point, I would like to make a motion that anything moving forward, if it's 5,000 or more, would have to be brought to the board, even on the COVID end of it too. If something comes up, again, hopefully we're getting out of this damn virus thing here, so that would also be the same thing. Anything from now moving forward has to relate with COVID or anything, at 5,000 or more, has to be brought to the board.
So Mr. Chair, I think that helps clarify things, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Wincher. And so you're saying that your motion would cover not only the building project, which we kind of all agree is kind of coming to the end, but then also you're looking to address that, whatever that numbers were expanded to, and I don't have that notebook with me here, this past spring, but it was a number greater than $5,000.
And Mr. Chair, it doesn't have any authority. So I guess I'm so confused as far as we have a purchasing policy within our organization that covers any budgeted or unbudgeted items. Is there something, I can't even think of a
The question
way
was,
we've
Deb,
deviated from that.
You came to us and you wanted the purchasing power, because it was 5,000. I know that number somewhere, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. You wanted to have that increased.
That was just for the change orders for the building project. And that is all we were talking about with that. And exactly like Commissioner Lemire had indicated, there's been nothing that's been outside of that that hasn't been through our,
And my interpretation was it was more than just change orders, and I
No.
maybe took that
Nope.
wrong. So,
Yeah,
and
no.
I'm fine with that too, but again, I want to have it moving forward from today, moving forward, that anything now, if it's a change order in the building or whatever, it's back to where
but
it
that,
originally was.
Mr. Chair, that it would just be with following our, like, there isn't an authority that has that outside of our purchase. Maybe Steve, can you help me? I don't understand.
The change orders were things that Mike would present.
Yes.
Yeah, during the project, that were changed to a contract that was already in place. Everything that's come in since this project's done has been older items that we brought everything in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a $15,000 limit. I think everything since contracts have been completed for the most part.
You
Nothing's
second
really
it.
come in. And if they've done come in, they come in to you directly to give it to them.
So my question is, then why did we do it in the first place?
Those are change orders to contract.
Right, so we,
Contracts are all, they're all final.
true,
They're
but
gonna be done with in the next,
if it's done today, done tomorrow, I just want to clarify that anything that from now moving forward, because my interpretation was, and I'm wrong on that then, is that anything that was coming forward between now and then, if it happens to go above 10,000, then that authorization we did give our administrator, so.
that was just on change orders to current contracts that, not to.
And it's verified now, but it's on
These
record.
items here, the cameras and some of these other things, those have been order items that we brought for you
Understand.
for approval.
Just want it on record, we don't have to make a motion.
Wild.
Mr. Chair, I withdraw my motion.
Okay. S-
My second.
You withdrew your second.
Yes.
So Randy still's got a motion on the floor, right? Is it-
Again, I'll withdraw the motion, I just, for record, that we have this on.
Okay, but my understanding is that authority was given for the building project to do that stuff. So when that's done, that doesn't proceed back to our normal policy. So she's got to go back to our normal policy on what spending is. And if we approved anything on COVID, it would be the same thing. If COVID's over with and that spending, it goes back to our general policy. So I don't see where we need a motion or a second, because when that's done, it's done. That's the only authority that she had was in that item, right there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I understood that. So, okay, the motion's been taken off the floor
Good
and,
with that, as long as we had a good discussion, thank you.
okay. Committee reports. Commissioner Lemire, would you mind going first? Or did I hit you off guard?
Schedule?
We have 3 weeks. We have 2 planning. So it goes through February 21st all the way through March 13th.
Okay, 22nd, there should be a planning commission on that day,
Planning Commission's been canceled.
canceled. 23rd, planning session. 22nd, I'm sorry, 22nd, I got HRA, 9 o'clock. In person, yep. Second, planning session,
On the 23rd, you mean?
second. I said the 23rd one already. It looks like do we have 2 planning sessions in a row, Deb?
Yes, because there's 5.
Okay, 2 planning sessions. The 5th, T-Schwack at Public Works. The 8th, Yellow Ribbon, 5:30, and it's been on Teams. It's been Teams or Zoom, one of them two. Yeah. 9th, County Board meeting. 10th, Department Head meeting. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wincher.
All right, on the 22nd, I believe it's a Zoom Tri-County Extension at 10 o'clock. That's with us, Benton County and Stearns. I've gotten a text or an email on that one. The 23rd, after the planning, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Deb, it's connect with the commissioners.
After the 23rd, yep.
Okay, so that's at 11 o'clock roughly. Did you say the soil and water? I have soil and water at 8 o'clock on Friday, the 26th. That's Zoom. And then I have an AMC Extension Committee meeting at 1 o'clock on Zoom. That's the University of Minnesota. Did you say Board of Adjustments on the 2nd?
No, I didn't.
Board of Adjustments on the 2nd at 7 PM. Pardon?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And then we got board on the 9th. Go to the 13th, and that takes care of me, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jelinski.
On the 24th at 6 PM, I have a career pipeline safety meeting that will be virtual, normally held sometimes in St. Cloud, sometimes in Little Falls, but that will be virtual this year. 25th at 12:30, I have a State Emergency Communications Board meeting. That will be virtual. Nobody cares about a doctor's appointment.
I do, Commissioner.
Yeah. On the 1st of March at 6:30 PM, I have a Morrison County Public Safety meeting. I believe that's virtual. On the 3rd of March at 11 o'clock, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee meeting. On the 4th at 10 a.m., I have a State Emergency Communications Board Legislative Committee meeting. That's virtual. We talked about TSWAC. And then on the 12th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board RAC meeting. That is also virtual. Mr. Chair, that's all I have, I believe.
Thank you, Commissioner Blaine.
The only thing I can add is on Thursday, February 25th at 6 PM. Region 5 Development Commission Board meeting. Virtual. That would be it.
Okay, the only other,
Unless I'm missing something.
the only other thing that I can see is March 4th, I've got Council of Aging, and March 16th, Community Development. Tabitha, when is my airport one originally? Because we haven't had that, but I don't. The third Thursday, so I don't need that one yet.
But your trails will.
The Trails one was last Thursday, I think. I never got no.
March is a new month.
Okay, and that's the, what week was that on? Jeff, do you remember when?
March, I'm going to take a stab at, would Trails be on the 11th?
That's a Thursday?
Yep.
Yeah, but I think it's the third one.
Or is it the 18th? I don't have it anymore.
Okay, so that'd be the 11th. I haven't got any notification from them at all on anything.
Yep.
Well, no, I put down the Trails on the 11th because it should be, but I haven't got no notification from them last.
Have you been in contact with Frank?
No.
Okay.
He
Okay.
sent me his phone number, but I didn't.
Yep, okay,
I was gone
that's
last
fine.
week when it was, so,
I haven't got anything either, so.
okay. All right, that,
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
yes, you can.
So, when I look ahead on the calendar, in March, and we have, we have back-to-back planning sessions now, last week of February and first week of March. So will we have a planning committee, or will we have a planning session that last, Tuesday, the 30th of March, and then go back to back again in April. So the first, which would be the 6th of April.
The 6th is a board meeting.
6th to the board meeting.
So we have 2 board meetings a month, and the other Tuesdays are automatically kind of listed and identified as planning sessions. And sometimes with 5 Tuesdays, they go back to back with that. So we always schedule the board meetings, and by default, the rest are planning sessions.
So it doesn't matter, so we don't have it set where it's like the first and third, Tuesdays are always board or
Not
always
necessarily.
planning.
Not necessarily, no, it's just 2 Tuesdays a month are set as board meetings, and then the other are, and it's typically every other, because there's 4. But when there's 5 Tuesdays is when there's kind of that doubled up of planning sessions in a row. Yeah, it's issuing warrants. We'll have Joyce, their auditor's office, take a look at the schedule and the calendar that we set for the year
Okay.
ahead of time, and we kind of do that and then
Okay.
follow
Thank
along
you.
with that.
And So I was wondering, so what dictates that if we had something, have something in policy, well, it had to be, yeah, so it's.
Yeah, something along-
somebody
yeah.
paying- It's somebody paying the bills, that's why this matters when we meet.
Well, we kind of set that at the outset of the year, and if something would change, or it's happened before where we change it, or we reschedule because of like a conference came up or something like that, but typically not. I mean, usually it's those board meetings are set for the year
Okay.
at the outset.
So the other point I was gonna make is we went the schedule till the 13th, but the 14th, daylight savings time changes too, so that's a pretty damn important day for
Yes,
for
it
me.
is.
And with that, I move to adjourn.
Does that mean that you'll be an hour earlier then?
Not a chance, not
Okay.
a chance.
All right, we got a motion to adjourn the meeting, second?
Second.
Seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Was the 23rd the one?